Introduce yourself here.
Hey, what's going on, Dylan? Bear with Portakeeper and Espresso Outlet. And today we got the Kaleido M6 roaster. And I want to do some roasting with Dylan because I know Dylan has an M6 and it's been a little cold up in Chicago, but it's a nice day here in Kansas. So I figured it was a fun day to do some roasting and maybe we can do it live.
It made me think of that phrase, "We're not in Kansas anymore."
We're not in Kansas anymore. It can be nice here. It's the nice time of year before it's just like ridiculous hot and humid.
So, how long have you had that preheated for before you drop the beans in?
Well, with all the technology annoyances, YouTube, it's been going for like 30 or 40 minutes, but you probably don't have to go that long if you don't want. It is kind of nice to get plenty of heat built up into the roaster itself. Like you can feel, especially on top, you can feel some of the heat starting to absorb into the body of the roaster, which is it can be pretty important as you do roasts. I know a lot of people they'll preheat their roaster for quite a while. I've done it both ways.
So now, for someone who's just a beginner like myself, is it easier to you like? I know there's three different ways you can buy uh, the actual unit with
Yeah,
the actual tablet, without either the tablet or the PC, or just the option to use Artisan.
yep.
Um, what would you feel is the easiest way for someone just starting out?
That's a really good question, and it really depends on the person's just level of comfort. I feel like if you just want to pull it out and get it going, you can plug the tablet in and you can be roasting. I have an M1 over here, and you can just be preheated and roasting. The downside is you're going to be a little bit more limited on some of the fancy stuff that Artisan can do, but it's really easy to get going. You don't have any of the Bluetooth things you have to deal with. You don't have any of the laptop that you have to have charged. So that is a big plus if you're just wanting to roast. So if you're not like as serious about it, the tablet could be pretty solid. The pro version, this is a pro version. It is Artisan only, so everything is controlled through Artisan. And then you have the dual system, which a lot of people are liking because you get the tablet as well as you're able to control it through Artisan. But I think the thing that a couple people didn't know about it is you can't run it the same as a pro. You can't run it completely without the tablet. You have to have the tablet and your computer. So I thought that was a little bit weird at first, and I roasted on a Alio Bullet, and they were pretty much exactly the same. So he connected into Artisan, but it has a round display, and he did 99% of the controls on the buttons. He goes, Artisans just to track it. If you're doing a PID roast, it's going to give it the data to do the auto adjusting. But if you're doing a manual roast, he goes, this is just a display. It really doesn't do anything else. And this is your functionality. So I thought it was a little bit weird at first, but I mean, once you know that, it's really not that big of a deal.
So,
You know,
what's the startup time putting the software onto your PC when you get the unit?
startup time, like when you pull it out of the box, I usually tell people to go download Artisan before they get it. And it's not that big of a download. It's a couple hundred megabytes, I think. Then you install it. I have a MacBook Pro here, so if you have a Mac, you actually need to get an older version. You can reach out to us. The new version's kind of buggy, I feel, on Artisan. If you have Windows, it's just the latest version seems to work fine. And then you'll go to our website and download the. It's a special file specifically for this roaster. It's really common. If you eventually, what we're going to do is there's a whole list of machines in here, and we're working with Artisan to get the Kaleido added to that list. So eventually, you won't have to go download that file, but they have to vet your machine. They have to test it out. They have to make sure that it's going to cooperate with their system. So it takes some time, but in the meantime, it's basically download Artisan. It might take 10 minutes. Depends on your internet. And then you download that file, you load the file. We have a lot of nice videos out there on that. And then you'll go to your config and set up your port. It's like two drop down menus. We have all that on a video, and it's really easy to set up. I think one thing that does it tripped me up at first, and I think it's tripped up a few other people, is they'll go in and they'll connect their Bluetooth, and it'll show it's connected, and then it'll say it's not connected. And what you need to do is you actually just need to open Artisan and click on, and it'll go out and it'll actually ping the roaster, and it'll connect to it. So it's kind of like if you have like earbuds and they're in your case, it's not communicating with the earbuds until you pull them out of the case and you put them in. So it's finally saying like, "Hey, I want to go connect to that," and it just goes and connects. So that kind of slid me up at first. I'm like, "Why isn't this saying connected?" And then I opened up Artisan and it connected.
So what's the what's the green beans of choice today?
The green beans, I haven't roasted these for a while. This is a new batch for me. I got these from Brent, Costa Ricans, the Termico fermentation, and these have been pretty solid. One of the Kaleido users, her name's Edith. She actually sent me some that were really good. So
Is that
I
the
figured
brown sugar, cinnamon, vanilla, and spice or whatever?
this is raspberry, mandarin, and sugar. So it's real fruity.
Oh.
It's a more natural process flavored bean, so it's real fruity and good.
And
Um,
I see you're using the hopper for to put it in. That's pretty smart.
yeah, I had a couple of these old hoppers. I use them to like fill up my bags because it's really hard to fill up a bag out of like one of these awkward shaped bins. But
Yeah.
you put your bag on the bottom, you pull the chute, and it opens. So my friend got like 10 of these, and he's like, I don't know what to do with them. I don't have 10 Super Jollies. So I ended up taking a few, and it's kind of my free bean hopper of choice.
That'd be nice. So tell everybody what you're doing there.
Okay, so I weighed out 400 grams just to start with. And you want to make sure that this is shut. This is your bean dump. And I usually like to make sure that my trier is in and pointed down. And then this, you can kind of forget it open. I've done it once, and I know other people, they say that they've done it. Make sure it's closed. And I like to just dump them in the top. This can do up to 700 grams. We're just doing 400 today.
So now, do you find that doing only 400 grams, it's going to take a little bit longer, obviously, for your trier to pick up the coffee?
It can. As soon as the beans start to expand a little bit, since this is pretty much the minimum, you might have to hold it. I usually kind of do it at about a 30-degree angle or so, and they'll eventually just start rolling in, and then you can pull them out and look. As they hit first crack, you're probably going to see them a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that when I first did my only roast that I did, when it was actually somewhat decent out the one day, it took me forever to try getting any of the coffee.
Yeah,
any of the beans.
M6 is a pretty big machine. I mean, you're roasting about a pound of beans. The M10, like you would never probably pick up any beans at 400 grams. So M2, if you want to do 400 gram batches, the M2, I mean, it's made for 400. I run 400 in it, and it handles it all day long, no problem. The M6 is quite a bit bigger. It's almost twice the size. What beans? And we're doing these Costa Rican Good Brothers, and it's this Termico fermentation, raspberry, mandarin, and sugar. And someone roasted some of these for me, and they ran them a bit dark. They did several different attempts, and man, they were good.
You there?
Oh yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Got out. Well, let's drop them just to get it going, and then we can talk because we'll have about 10 minutes. So usually, what I do is it's been preheated. I have my charge temp set at 170 degrees, and I have my damper, which is our exhaust temp or exhaust fan. There's a duct set at 20 just to start off with. I usually like my drum at 100 and my heater at 100. It was a little bit, I don't know if it was so much confusing, but just took a second to wrap my head around. You have a heater value of 0 to 100%, and then you actually have a set value. And what this set value is doing is it's allowing you to determine your charge temp. Because if you just did heater to 100, it's going to go max.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a thermostat. It's going to go up to 170, and then it's going to drop. And it's going to go up to 170, and then it's going to drop. I think I waited too long, and I needed to. It's cooled down a little bit. Give it a second, and it'll heat up.
The whole point of not keeping your heater at 100 the entire time is a simple fact that you don't want your roast to only be 7 minutes long. You want it to kind of go out and go to like 10, 11 minutes. So that way you get the most out of your bean, right?
Yeah. If you did like this will go up to like 240 degrees or something like that, maybe even hotter. So if you charged at 240 degrees, you're just gonna those beans are just gonna take in all that heat. It's not gonna dry. They're just gonna be gross. You're gonna get a real charred outside, and you're going to get a real green middle. So what we want is we want that charge temp to basically go into those beans as quickly as it can, but then just kind of sit there and slowly ramp up. And why we're slowly ramping up is we're drying out the beans. So the beans, these are probably pretty wet. I don't know what the moisture content is on them, but I bet they're 10 to 14%, something like that. And during that drying phase, that initial phase, which is this green portion of the graph, we're going to probably get it down to like 1% moisture. And by the end of the roast, we're probably going to be like a half a percent moisture. So they're
So
really
if you
dry.
start with 400 grams, how much do you usually end up with at the end of a roast? I mean, it depends on the bean, but
Yeah,
what do you average?
usually like a 10 to 15% loss. And that's a really good way of it's a cheap, inexpensive way of knowing how your roast turned out. So if you knew exactly how many beans you put in, you didn't lose any. Like I'm real bad about my spoon will fling up a bean and I don't put it back in. But I'm just not watching this. Um, we're at our set temperature. I
I
wasn't watching and it turned off and I want it lower.
I need the configuration you have for your exhaust.
Yeah, I made that. We need to try to find something that we can just sell and buy, you know. Let's try
Yeah,
to
it'd be a lot easier because right now mine's just open, so I got to do all my roasts outside. And it's a pretty quiet roaster too.
yeah, it's really quiet. Well, we're a little bit warm. We'll just up the damper a little bit. I'm actually going to hit the start button, and the background that I have loaded, it starts at about 30 seconds, give or take. And then we're just going to click charge as soon as I dump them.
So, a
Man,
question from my coffee show. I don't believe so. There it says, "Can you connect Kaleido with an iPad instead of laptop?"
no, you can't. That's
I
not an
didn't think so.
artisan thing, and it's not a Kaleido only thing. It's just an artisan. They don't do iPad. So if you see people using tablets, usually what they're doing, and I've seen like 3 people say it recently, they got um, what is it, Surface Pro 4s for like
Yep,
less than $100 on eBay. So
that's a
right,
steal.
our bean temp says it's 95 degrees, and there's actually a probe in the front, and the beans are rolling through it. And even though it shows that our bean temp dropped, really what's happening is this is an ambient temperature inside the roaster. I'll try to move closer. This is the ambient temperature inside the roaster itself. But in reality, your beans started down here. So what it looks like your beans are doing is they were hot and they're getting cooler, but actually they're cold and they're trying to pick up that heat now. So
Yep.
the graph is a little bit of a lie, but that's just how these roasters are and how the artisan software tracks it. So over here off to the side, we have our Delta BT. That's our rate of rise, and it's a little bit high right now. I'd probably like to slow it down. So I'll probably do my heat at like 60 or so. And it has this trend line that's dashed. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of start arcing over and going on this background. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a good drying phase. So the green portion is the drying phase, the yellow portion is the Maillard phase, and then the top portion is your actual where it's getting the darkness in the bean and where you're caramelizing your beans itself. So at the top, it's saying that our drying phase, based off of the temperature, is going to be about 4 minutes and 43 seconds. And we'll probably up the heat just a little bit now that it's. And if we can get our drying phase to about that 5 minute mark, I like this background, but I don't like how they've set up the different phases. They're a little bit off. But based off of this is a calculator, and you can use it to increase or decrease your temperatures. Let's do a little bit of adjusting. You can use it to increase and decrease your temperature so that you can get your drying phase to a place that you just is perfect for you. So our delta BT's kind of dropped a little bit. I usually like to have this about 13% right now. Once we get up into the Maillard phase, we'll probably drop it and try to flatten it out. Now, different beans react differently, but that's done pretty good for me, at least for most of my beans and for most of my roasts. I usually don't mess around at the buttons as much, but I've not roasted these beans, so I'm kind of
So
playing around
what's
with
your
it.
what's your target time normally to start as like a starting point when you first start a bean, and then obviously you adjust based on what you experience when you're tasting the bean, but what do you try to target when you're first trying out a new bean?
So it kind of depends on the bean style itself. A lot of the washed, if you're looking for a darker roast and the bean has the density to take that additional heat, um, you can usually go a bit darker if that's your thing. I usually like to go on the lighter side. So overall, I like to drag, and it's not really dragging out, but I don't want it roasting so fast that it's just cooking the outside of the bean. I want it to be this nice, even roast throughout the entire bean. So typically 9 to 10 minutes minimum. You can go probably no less than 9 usually, and you can probably go as long as 12 if you needed to. Now, right now, you can kind of hear some this very light cracking. We're not hitting first crack. What it is it's actually the remainder of the moisture leaving the bean, and they're actually entering the Maillard stage. So we're at 4.5 minutes right now. And I like to mark everything on the graph. It's important. So click the dry end. Even if you're doing a PID roast, I still use all the buttons to mark all of my timing. So they said about 4 minutes and 20 seconds. We were about 4:40, but remember, this isn't a profile for this bean. This is just something for me to use
It's
as
like a
a
guide, it's a
just a
tool to
guide.
use.
Yeah. So mine are picking up good. You can maybe tell a little bit they are increasing in size a little bit. Our Delta BT, it's a little bit high. We're at about 16%, and we're dropping a little bit, but not a real big deal because I want it to be about 13%. And we're definitely going in the yellowing phase. So you can see them going into that yellowing phase. If we were to get our trier and pull some out, I mean, they're this nice brown, light brown color. And what it's doing is you have all this like green chlorophyll in the beans, and it tastes really gross. I'm just gonna flip this around. It tastes really gross. So when we're in that drying phase, we're actually getting all the moisture out of the beans and preparing it for all the acids and everything that we're going to release from the bean during this mallarding phase. So this is preparing it for the final caramelizing stage, which will happen after first crack begins. So once first crack begins, that's pretty much the starting point of the browning. That's where we're getting all our caramel flavors.
So now, who would you say the target audience for these roasters would be for?
Um, we have all over the place. We have people that are just coffee enthusiasts, and then we also have some small shops that they want to use them for sample roasters. Now, it kind of depends, and that's kind of a hard one for me. A sample roaster is a nice thing to have, but I've seen people do it with bullet, and I've seen people do it with this, and they expect it to develop a profile on artisan. take the profile and then go run it on a 10-kilo roaster, and it just doesn't work that way.
So let's say someone's starting out a mobile coffee business like I am,
Yeah.
and they want to start roasting their own coffee. Not even just for single origin. Let's just say they have every event they serve around, I don't know, let's just say 50 people. And they do it on, let's say, 3 days a week. Would the M6 be something that would be sufficient enough to keep up with the demand of amount of people you're serving, or do you think
So,
the M10 would be the one?
how many beans? How many pounds of beans?
I would say probably let's just go 10 to 15 pounds
10 to 15 pounds.
a
My
week.
roast is going pretty fast, unfortunately. I think I've been talking and not watching. 10 to 15 pounds a week. I'd probably go M10 because you're going to get a solid 2 pounds a batch. So that's 5 batches of beans. So we've entered
Now,
track, not to cut you off. The bean temp, we're probably going to drop at about 203. So we're getting ready to drop. You can keep talking, but I just wanted to fill that in.
yep. So for let's see, how do I say repeatability? How easy is it to repeat a roast that you've done prior with the same bean?
So what I like to do is I actually like to manually roast and dial in my roast, and then I'll save that roast, and you can just use that roast as your PID roast. Now, what's probably a better thing to do would be to take that and we're gonna get loud here in a second. Would be to take that roast and throw it on the artisan designer, and take this draft and clean it up so that you have a really nice artisan roast that's been designed well versus using one that's a little bit all over the place. Now, people, they freak out with this noise. It's not a big deal. That's pretty normal. Doesn't matter which roaster.
So how long does the beans have to sit in the cooling tray? Probably what, a good probably 4 minutes, just to they're all cool to the touch.
They look darker than what they are. They're really not that dark. I could hear you talking. I just couldn't hear.
So normally around what, 4 to 5 minutes, or just cool to the touch.
I usually do cool to the touch. Like, these are still a bit warm. I'll explain here in a second once I get them cooled down. So it's really only been like a minute and 40 seconds. I would say they're pretty cool. I do like to get them completely cool if I can. This bean cooler works really well. It actually has a gap, and it actually pulls air from all around the beans. So it's actually extremely efficient at cooling. But these are cool.
So now the reason it's important to make sure you cool down the beans right after they drop is because otherwise, because the beans are at such a high temperature internally and externally, if you don't cool them right away, then what's going to happen is your beans are going to continue to roast.
Right.
And you obviously, once you drop it, you want it to cut as soon as possible.
Yeah, it'll actually be an exothermic reaction of the beans. And one night, since I have multiple Kaleidos, I accidentally had the M2 profile configured in here. And partway through the roast, I realized, and I couldn't turn the roaster off. It was my own fault. It wasn't the roaster's fault. And I dumped the beans and I put them off to the side, and they actually just kept roasting themselves. And it actually hit first crack. They're just black. They were so charred up. Loaded the new thing and turned on the cooling fan, and they cooled off in a minute. But yeah, if you don't hit them in a cooler, they're just going to keep cooking and cooking and cooking and cooking. They're going to be nasty. But like, I just chewed on one of these, and I can get out my knife. It's like so fruity and good. Let's see if we can see it.
Don't try this at home.
I don't know if it's going to focus on this camera or not. Just a sec.
Great iPhones or smartphones in general. There we go.
This.
A little hard to see, but you can still see it.
I guess it doesn't have the autofocus feature, but it's nice even roast throughout the entire bean, which that's what we're looking for. You'll see people, they'll be like, how's my roast? And like all these beans are just completely different colors. You'll have really light, you'll have really dark, and these are pretty much perfect.
So when you roast coffee, when you get done, do you just try one normally just to see kind of how they taste?
I take one and chew it. Some people like it, some people don't. These beans in particular, like usually, let me grab some. Like these are washed beans, and they smell like grass. They smell like someone cut a hay field or grass. Usually, you get the hay feeling or smell as you roast. These, they smell like if you've ever been in a brewery and you have that kind of funky grain smell that's really sweet. Since these are that special fermentation, you kind of get that funky sweet smell out of these. So just chewing up one of these, it's like a chocolate raspberry. It's crazy.
That's nuts. That's crazy. Yeah. So when they make chocolate covered coffee beans, do they literally just cover the coffee bean in chocolate, or
just cover the coffee bean?
That's it.
That's it.
That's crazy. So I wonder how much
high cacao, like loads of caffeine content, and then you put a coffee bean in it, and
I wonder how much caffeine's in one little tiny bean.
I don't know. I bet there's some stuff out there on it.
That'd be interesting. So if you were to give someone like your final thoughts so far of owning the roaster, what would be the biggest pros, and what would you tell people to consider when buying one?
Okay. So for me, let's cut off on this. For me, it really depends on what you're looking to get out of it. If you're looking at it as a hobby, a lot of people, when I was on another live, they said, "Man, that's a lot of money. Man, that's a lot of money." I have a Gene Cafe over here. It was $600. I bought $200 of beans, and it paid for itself in like 10 months, 9 months. Now these are 2,000 plus for most of them, so it's going to take you a little bit longer. But you also got to think, what are you roasting for? Are you roasting just for a cheaper half pound a week to save a few dollars, or are you roasting? I mean, these are expensive beans. I have some beans in the house. It's $20 a pound green. It'd probably be $50 a pound roasted. So you're able to really up your quality of your coffee for less money. And I guess I'm not really into it for the savings. I'm into it because I like it, and I'm going to get the beans that I want out of it. Now, I've been pretty lucky where I live to have, there's two roasters in particular that are just extremely good. Not all their coffee's good, not all my coffee's good. So it's personal preference. But for years, I just couldn't even get good espresso. And I just like straight espresso. The beans that I drink, they're pretty expensive, and I couldn't find them all the time. So this allows me, I mean, I can go buy a 5-pound bag of something that I know I love and just keep roasting it and roasting it and roasting it, and I'll be happy every day. And it's $24 for 8 or 10 ounces of beans. And these are, I don't know about these, but these are probably like $5 in comparison for the same thing. So for me, that was really alluring because I could get exactly what I want when I want.
So, so for the final question, because I know a couple people have asked me so far, what between the lineup, the M1, the M2, the M6, and the M10, what would you say that which market is each one trying to be in? So, like, how do you decide?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, depending on what your purpose is, but who's the M1 for? Who's the M2
Yep.
for to the M10?
So I get that question like daily, and I try to walk them through it of just the thought process of what are you buying this for? Are you buying it for yourself? Are you buying it for a small business? Are you buying it because you enjoy it? You probably know Josh. Josh has an
Yep.
M6, and he's used a Bowmore for quite a while, and he doesn't really do it to make money, but he has some friends that like his coffee, so he'll roast a couple pounds every week, and he'll sell them for not much more than what he paid, and he enjoys it. So the M6, he's going to be able to do it a lot easier than like an M2 or an M1. The M1, at least for me, what I like about the M1 is, let's say I wanted to run a fruity bean, I wanted to run a wash bean, and maybe some cheap beans, and just have something for like a drip coffee pot for people that don't care. The M1, you could do that. It's going to take you longer to do that, but going really small on the roast, you're not going to have as efficient of a roast. You're really not saving any time, and you might be roasting too much coffee, or it gives you the ability to have more variety. From a
Yep.
personal standpoint, I really like the M2. I have an M2 that I brought home yesterday. I've had it at the shop. And I would say for a home user that uses a pound a week, the M2 is solid because it's going to give you a solid half pound of beans per batch, easy, and you can do probably that pound of beans from setup to cleanup in 30 minutes. And people are like, man, I don't have time. I don't have time. I guess it depends on who's your coffee provider, maybe your mail order. But for me, by the time I go to the roaster, who I know, who's going to talk to me for an hour, and drive over there and drive home, I probably spent 2 hours going and buying 2 pounds of beans. So 30 extra minutes on some evening, and you could probably do 2 weeks worth. The other nice thing about that is I don't have any out here. You can get some of these really like expensive natural processed beans that need to just rest for a week minimum, not 2 days. Like a lot of roasts, you're gonna just let rest for 2 days, and then you can drink it. I drink mine pretty much next day. I don't really wait, but some of those really long resting beans, you're going to want to roast what you're drinking this week. And then you're going to want to roast what you're drinking a week or two from now when those extremely nice beans are in their prime. So
Right.
that's where the M2, I feel like, is like a very nice homeowner size roaster. It's a half pound. There's really nothing out there like it. The M6, it's probably getting a little bit big for a homeowner. Now, 400 gram batch, I mean, you could do the same thing. You could do two size roasts of 400 to 500 grams, and you're getting a nice over pound of beans for your week. If you are making some for friends, you could change this from 400 to 700 or 650, and now you're getting some additional beans that you can sell or give away as gifts. Made some family members some. These are probably going to be like our Easter beans, so I'll probably have these around and make some like V60 and stuff for people because they don't really like espresso as much as I do. But
Exactly.
the M6 is definitely really nice for that. You can do smaller roasts, but you can also do bigger roasts. The M10, on the other hand, I have one over here that I need to work on. It was a little bit of shipping damage, and it's a big machine. I mean, it's a kilo, so it's 1,200 grams. So it's double this. It's four times the M2. And I'd say the downside with that is if you're not filling it up with quite a bit of beans from the get go, you're going to struggle. So if you're trying to do like a 300 or 400 gram batch, you're probably going to hate.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably need to put at least a pound in. Now, if it's your first roaster, I have wasted some beans, so you are probably going to waste a lot more beans. But people that are willing to do it, or maybe a little bit more experienced in the roasting, and they know that they're maybe waste 5 pounds of beans getting going, and they're going to use cheap stuff that doesn't matter. Um, that's going to be a risk that you're just going to have to take, but I'd say it's going to be very rewarding as soon as you're churning out those 2 pound batches of beans again and again and again. And once you get it set up in artisan, you get a bean dialed in. I mean, you could, like you were talking about a small coffee roaster business. Um, Local guy here, he doesn't do it as much for his business, I don't think, but he has two catering carts that he brings around to different venues. He brings them to his church, and he actually works at a it's like a youth ministry type place, and they teach kids that are trying to learn some skills, and one of them is coffee roasting. So they have a coffee roaster there, and it's a kilo roaster, and they roast about 10 pounds, 12 pounds a week. Some weeks are a little bit more, and they sell them. So it's a weekly charity thing. They sell it every
That's
week.
pretty cool.
So I mean, he's putting 10, you could say max 15 pounds of beans through that kilo roaster, and maybe 6 roasts
Wow.
every week,
Yeah.
and then they pack them up and sell them. So I'd say that's probably about as much as you would want to do. I mean, it took, you could say, between heat up, roast, and cool down, you could round it off to 15 minutes. So 15 minutes for 2 pounds. So you
Which
can just
isn't bad.
do the math. I mean, it's going to take you a couple hours a week to do 10 pounds of beans, but that's a lot of coffee too at the same time. So
Well, I appreciate the live.
yeah,
It'll
no, it's been
be
fun.
it'll be 70s here soon. So maybe next time we do a live, you can show what's going on the computer while
Okay.
I'll show what's going on the outside, just so they can kind of get a live playback, ask questions, and then we can monitor that while they see the process in full.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to do another probably live video just for other people. They've said that they want to see the screen as I've roasted. I mentioned, like a lot of the noise going on, and that's common. You can actually go in, you can change your, I think they call it like a debounce setting, but you can change that to make it look prettier. It really doesn't mean anything. Really, what I'm focused on right here is this rate of rise, but they see me roast, they see me talk, but they don't necessarily always understand what I'm talking about. So need to do another one with the screen and a picture of the roaster going too at the same time. That'll help a lot. And then we'll get,
Troy said, "Thank you for the demo."
yeah, we'll get you roasting here soon on that M6. It's really not that bad to get going.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot. It just seems more complicated than what it actually is,
Yeah,
but and terrifying. But once you get into it, it's pretty easy, self-explanatory, and I feel like it's something that if you're into coffee already, it's going to be a really fun hobby to get into.
it's
So
it's addicting. I've had, man, there's been a lot of people buy them, and they'll follow up and they're like, I'm just roasting all the time. I love this. Um, I have too many beans, so I just give them out. And
yeah,
I mean, that's what I've been doing. Usually, I'm kind of slim on beans, and lately, I've not had too few beans. It seems like. So,
yeah, they'll be seeing a lot more of us too, doing some
yep.
live videos and not just of roasting, but anything
Yeah.
else that anybody has questions with.
Hand grinder. We're going to be doing DF64V. A lot of people, they're inbound right now. Some of them, about the first 50 or so, are coming here pretty quick. So you're going to start seeing a lot of DF64Vs hitting the market. Ton of DF83s about to hit the market. So a lot of
I should
cool.
be getting mine here soon, so we can go live with those.
Okay, you got a DF64V coming.
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
So
I use it. I use it a lot more than I expected.
I mean, I'm pretty excited to get coffee gear in general, but the DS64V is something that I've been really excited about getting.
Same.
Yeah.
When I have a dozen grinders that are bigger burrs, and I still see myself going back to that V, I mean, I really like it, like a
It,
lot.
it I mean, I have never actually like seen it in person, but seeing it on videos and everything and like the shoe and how everything just comes apart, it looks like it's extremely well built. So,
The DF83, I think, is nice. This is nicer. It's
yeah.
like it's next level quality from. the Turin folk.
And it's got the stronger motor and the DLC burrs.
DLC burrs, I like them better than the HU. Like, I'm going to say it now. I really do like them better than the HU. The multi-purpose unimodal, they're just a totally different animal. I need to take them out and put the DLC back in just for my videos and stuff. And I think I'd probably just leave the DLC in. It depends.
Yeah.
Now, like if you wanted like a really dangerous combo, I tell people get the DF83 with the HU burrs, and then get the DF64V with the unimodal burrs, and then you have the speed control, so you can do the slower speed for drip, and you could do like these beans are going to be freaking awesome in that. Maybe I'll leave them in for a week. These beans are going to be awesome in that unimodal burr. But if you're just doing like a one and done, I'd leave the DLC.
It actually be what I think would be pretty cool is if like I roast, so we both get the same beans, the same green beans. We both roast it, and then we send each other like a small batch of it, and then we can taste what each other's roasted tastes like.
Okay, I'd be down.
So you can kind of compare about that. That'd be cool. That'd be a cool video.
Yeah, this thing just cooled down. That's another thing. Usually let it hit about 50 degrees, and you can put it away. Make sure
yeah, my biggest recommendation, just make sure it's cool to the touch.
Yep. And it's nice and cool. It's been running. It's kind of been loud in the background.
Yeah.
If I've been, sometimes I'll notice in my videos I'm like screaming because this fan is so loud.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Barrett. We'll be doing more live videos soon. And if you get any kind of recommendations or anything, we'll go live together and do a video on it.
Awesome, man. More the better.
Sounds good to me. Well, I appreciate it, Barrett.
Talk to you later. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Thank you, everybody who's joined. Make sure you go check out Espresso Outlet for all the products that we talked about today. A lot of fun and exciting things upcoming. Again, my name's Dylan. This is my channel, Dylan's Home Espresso Bar. I am a member of Espresso Outlet. So if you have any kind of questions, make sure to reach out. We're here. We're happy to help. And we'll see you guys soon. Have a good one. Peace.